I truly do believe that fantasy football leagues are won in the late rounds. Fantasy football is all about finding the deep sleeper, finding the player that can catapult your team over the top. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 deep sleepers at every fantasy position, from the quarterback position, running back position, wide receiver position, and the tight end position in 2020. These are the players that you need to target at the end of your fantasy drafts in 2020. The players that too many people are sleeping on and you can scoop up to help you win your fantasy leagues in 2020. Before I give you my deep sleepers for fantasy football in 2020, spike the like button and subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more fantasy football content just like this. And don't forget to head over to my Patreon, where you can get my fantasy draft board to help you dominate your fantasy football leagues in 2020. $3 for this month. You can pick up exclusive fantasy content on the Patreon, as well as the draft board that I'll be using to dominate fantasy in 2020. First, clarifying what a deep sleeper is, in my opinion, a player that is falling and being drafted at least after the 10th round. And that's for the running back and the wide receiver positions. I actually moved it back to the 12th round with the tight end and quarterback positions, because those two positions are typically already waited on for most people playing fantasy football. Most people wait on the quarterback position. Most people wait on the tight end position. So that moves back the deep sleeper. So these are the players that I think have a chance, at least, to catapult you to success in fantasy in 2020, that can help you win your championship and ultimately break out this year. And really, you're just looking for one, maybe two of these players to really break out. These are players that sometimes won't even be drafted in your leagues, but I think can help you win in fantasy. And you should at least take a look at in some of your fantasy leagues. Let's kick it off with the quarterback position with my number 1 deep sleeper. Also happens to be the number 1 pick in this past year's NFL draft. I'm talking about, of course, quarterback Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. He is currently falling after the 12th round in fantasy drafts. He's going in the 12th round. And Joe Burrow is a player with immense talent. I think because he was drafted by the Bengals, and because the Bengals were so bad last year, which I didn't know if you know this, but any team that gets the first overall pick is more than likely bad the year before. Just saying. But because we've had this weird offseason, we haven't seen Joe Burrow actually play in preseason, we don't know where to draft Joe Burrow in fantasy. But to me, he is a top 16 fantasy quarterback this year, and will have some weeks versus good matchups where he can put up big-time fantasy totals, because he is the complete package as a quarterback, I believe, on and off the field. He's extremely accurate. He has really awesome pocket presence. That's why I think he can get by with a bad offensive line. He has great receivers around him, from AJ Green to Tyler Boyd to T. Higgins to John Ross to Joe Mixon to Auden Tate. I mean, there's a lot of talent around Joe Burrow on offense, and he has an offensive coach with a defense that is mediocre at best. The Bengals do play in a difficult division, but they are going to score points, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity for Joe Burrow to put up lots of yardage and garbage time points. And he also gives you an ability on the ground with his legs. His scrambling ability is super underrated. I think Joe Burrow can have an impact, at least for fantasy, in year 1. My second quarterback deep sleeper is Baker Mayfield of the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield is a guy that I would pretty much put in the category of post-hype sleeper. Remember, Baker Mayfield was going in like the 6th round last year. People were very high on Baker last year because they added Odell. Of course, they already had Jarvis Landry. They saw the Browns doing big things in 2019. I think he's a post-hype sleeper because I believe in 2020, it's really the season that the Browns will break out as a team. Therefore, Baker will have a good year this year. Baker has talent. He has plenty of arm strength. He has plenty of touch. He has plenty of athleticism. And now, I would say the pressure is off of him. There was a lot of pressure on him last year to do big things. Nobody's talking about the Browns this year. Nobody's talking about Baker Mayfield. Nobody's putting pressure on Baker Mayfield. Baker now has that chip on his shoulder that he had in his college days, in his rookie year. I think he's gotten that back. I think he got a little too comfortable in year 2. But I do believe that Baker will thrive in a new offense under Stefanski. I think he is built to play within this offense. He has the arm to execute the downfield throws. He has the receiver, the go-to guy that he now has chemistry with in Odell Beckham Jr. They added a tight end in Austin Hooper. He still has Jarvis Landry. I think they're going to run the ball successfully. He has a better offensive line. And yes, I don't think Baker's going to be a guy that capitalizes off of high volume, but he definitely has the opportunity to score a lot of touchdowns and to really be successful from an efficiency standpoint within this new Stefanski offense. I think Baker is a guy that we're going to look back on and say, why were we not higher on Baker in fantasy going into 2020? And my third deep sleeper for the quarterback position is Drew Lock. Now, Drew Lock is the definition of a deep sleeper because I believe in many fantasy leagues, he will not be drafted at all. And I understand why he's not being drafted. He's barely played in the NFL, and really we don't know what he's going to be like. But if there's any guy that could be the Patrick Mahomes of the NFL in 2020, the rookie or early, I guess you could say second-year quarterback, who we haven't seen much of, but has a lot of talent and has a lot of pieces around him, and he has special arm ability, that is definitely Drew Lock. Drew Lock is being drafted way late in drafts. Like I said, sometimes not even drafted. Yet a lot of people are high on the Broncos this year. A lot of people expect this offense to be legit, to score points. They have a better offensive line. They have Noah Fant at tight end that a lot of people expect to break out. They added Melvin Gordon. A lot of people like him in fantasy. They still have Phillip Lindsay. They added KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy, who people are high on. And KJ Hamler looks really good in camp. And then Cortland Sutton, who's an up-and-coming number 1 in this league. Plus, the big thing that people aren't mentioning is that he's gotten a new legit offensive coordinator now. So the fact that this offense is going to be better, this offense is probably going to be more pass-happy, and they added a bunch of receivers around him to throw the football to. A lot of receivers that he didn't necessarily have when he started last year. And the fact that he already has some NFL experience behind him. I think that Drew Lock, while I won't be picking him in many leagues, I think he could win leagues if he goes off. Because I could see Drew Lock having a huge second year, having a huge sophomore campaign. I could see him throwing for 30 touchdowns. I don't think that's out of the possibility here. I don't think that's crazy at all. So Drew Lock has the talent. And we're talking about Kyler Murray going in the 5th, the 6th round in fantasy drafts. But you could argue Drew Lock is nearly as talented as Kyler Murray. It's not that far from Kyler to Lock in terms of pure physical talent at the quarterback position. And yet we're drafting Drew Lock, another potential second-year breakout, way later on a team that's probably better. Even though the offensive scheme might not be as sexy, you have to take that into consideration. It at least deserves a little bit of thought. The first deep sleeper for the running back position, again, moving the margins here. For the running back position, I have 10th round and on instead of 12th round and on for the quarterback and tight end positions. For the running back position, I'm going to kick it off with JERICK McKINNON of the San Francisco 49ers. Again, truly a deep sleeper. This guy, a lot of people forgot even existed in the NFL, forgot even what team he played on. It's the San Francisco 49ers, by the way. Yeah, JERICK McKINNON is a player that has not been on the football field for a while, and we forget how special he can be with the ball in his hands in the NFL. And to me, if JERICK McKINNON truly is 100%, he's going to be in the mix in the San Francisco backfield, and the reports suggest that he will be in the mix. And not only that, but to me, he has the best receiving skill set of Tevin Coleman or Raheem Mostert. Either one. I think he will end up being with more touches, more game reps, and if he can prove he can be healthy, I think McKinnon is the most talented receiver in this backfield and will gain those touches. And in a San Francisco offense that's incredibly creative with Kyle Shanahan designing the screen game and just a few touches in the running game, I could see McKinnon actually breaking out this year as a true number one back. Everyone's picking Raheem Mostert. People are picking Tevin Coleman. But the truest best value here is JERICK McKINNON, who potentially is the most talented all-around back in this backfield. And I understand we haven't seen it for a long time, but where he's going in drafts, it's certainly worth to take with your last pick, JERICK McKINNON of the 49ers. My second deep sleeper at the running back position is Rex Burkhead of the New England Patriots. Rex Burkhead is not being drafted in any draft that I've been a part of, whether that's been best ball or normal mock drafts across the board, PPR, non-PPR, whatever mock you are in, he's not being drafted. And it's kind of funny to me that he's not being drafted. And yet everyone is talking about Damian Harris, which I totally understand that because he's the young, fresh legs. He's a guy that they invested capital in the draft. But Rex Burkhead, in thinking about this offseason, he is the guy that they are going to trust with the football in New England. Being a Patriot fan, I know how much the Patriots love Rex Burkhead. He is a truly, as Belichick would call him, a four-down player. He can play as a true workhorse with the football in his hands as a running back. He can receive the football at an elite level, playing receiver in Cincinnati at times. He also can play in punt coverage. So Belichick loves this guy. And from all the reports, Rex Burkhead has looked like the fastest, most explosive back in New England. They've signed Lamar Miller. Sony Michel is on the pup, and I don't believe will be back anytime soon. Rex Burkhead could be the running back in New England that has an explosive early season and breaks out for the first time in his career. I understand that Burkhead has never proved he could be a bell cow, but I've seen it in moments where he's been the best, most explosive ball carrier. If you asked any Patriot fan a year ago who was their best running back, it was Rex Burkhead. I understand James White has his role, and that will remain that. James White's going to be the receiver. James White's going to be the third down back. But Rex Burkhead, I think, is going to get a majority of the red zone touches. I think he's going to get a majority of the rushing. I think he's going to get a lot of receptions. He'll be involved in the screen game because he's really good in that area. And he is the most trusted do-it-all back in this backfield at this moment. Remember, Damian Harris has not even played a snap in an NFL regular season game, and he won't be able to prove that he's better than Rex in the preseason. So it's at least going to take some time for Damian Harris to surpass Burkhead, and I'm not even sure that he will, because I think Burkhead is a better all-around player and talent, and he is, in my opinion, more explosive, even if Harris is younger. So Burkhead is a really good deep target in your fantasy drafts. The third and final running back deep sleeper is A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. A.J. Dillon was drafted in the second round. The running back that a lot of people forget was highly invested in. The Packers took him in the second round for a reason, because they really love his talent. It wasn't because they needed a running back, because they had Aaron Jones, right? And Aaron Jones was special last year. But the thing I don't understand is that everybody keeps talking about how Jones is not a first rounder, yet they're not drafting A.J. Dillon. But that has you concerned. So what is it? Is Jones just straight out gonna regress? Or is Dillon actually a threat? Because if you're believing that they like Dillon, then why aren't you drafting him in fantasy? Because when you look at A.J. Dillon, I mean, just look at the lower half of this guy's body. He's built like a beast, and I think he's going to play a Derrick Henry kind of role for Matt LaFleur's offense, where guess what? Matt LaFleur comes from Tennessee as their former OC. So I think he has a specific role in mind when it comes to A.J. Dillon, and it might not be immediately. And I understand they also have Jamal Williams there, so there's going to be split carries and touches within this backfield to start with. But I do believe that when it comes to the power running game and the guy that is truly built to be a inside the tackles runner, it's got to be A.J. Dillon. And again, there is a reason they invested in this kid, because they believe he can be special and they believe he can be their Derrick Henry. The wide receiver position for the deep sleepers. Let's start off with a familiar name, DeSean Jackson. D-Jax of the Philadelphia Eagles is being taken ridiculously low. I understand he's old. I understand he's not exactly the sexy pick anymore. And I understand that the Eagles invested high capital in Jalen Reagor. But everything I've seen and everything that I believe suggests that DeSean Jackson will be the #1 receiver for the Eagles in 2020. And to get a #1 target, or I would say a #1 receiver, because of course they have Ertz and Goddard there, in wherever he's being drafted, is pretty ridiculous. So I am also going to be investing in Reagor in drafts. I totally get that, but I just don't understand the lack of drafting DeSean Jackson. If you look at the first game that Wentz and him played together, they were magical. They were a special connection. And DeSean Jackson can still run very fast. He burned Darius Slay in practice one-on-one. So he still has it. And as long as he's on the field, you know what? Who cares if he's on the field or not? The games that he's on the field, he'll be a startable receiver because he's going to be the guy that they target down the field consistently. He's a veteran. He has continuity within this offense, this scheme, and with this quarterback. Jalen Reagor does not have that, and he's very unpolished. So DeSean Jackson, I think people are going to be overdrafting Reagor for what he'll give you early in the year. They're going to end up dropping him most likely. And DeSean Jackson is the guy that's going to be going off early in the year. That's what I believe, at least. The second deep sleeper at the wide receiver position is a rookie. And it's funny because I just kind of bashed a little bit a rookie in Philadelphia, Jalen Reagor. Even though I believe in him, I like him. But Brandon AIYUK is a guy that I truly like. And not only do I like him, who cares if I like him? Kyle Shanahan likes him, okay? And I trust Kyle Shanahan when it comes to wide receiver play, especially when that wide receiver is more than likely going to be their #1 wide receiver in week 1. Brandon AIYUK is going to get manufactured touches, whether that be a reverse, a screen, whatever it is, they're going to find a way to get this special guy after the catch the football. And Kyle Shanahan was giddy about picking him. He wanted to pick him in the top 15. And if they actually did pick him where they picked Kinlaw, because Kinlaw was there, so they took him, but they would have taken him if he wasn't there. All reports suggest it. And the funny thing is, if he were picked there, he'd probably be going like 3 rounds higher than he is because the hype would start to roll. But because he's less recognized than a Jerry Jeudy or a CeeDee Lamb or a Ruggs, he's not being drafted where they're being drafted, even though he's in San Francisco, one of the best teams in football, and he's probably going to get plenty of opportunity. I'm buying into the opportunity. I'm buying into Kyle Shanahan loving a player, and I'm going and picking Brandon AIYUK as many times as I can later in drafts. My final deep sleeper at the wide receiver position is N'Keal Harry of the New England Patriots. Harry is being drafted very late for a player that was invested with a first-round pick by Bill Belichick just a season ago. And I understand the tape doesn't look very sexy when it comes to the Patriots. N'Keal Harry in 2019, he was not exactly the greatest receiver in terms of gaining separation, in terms of gaining chemistry with Tom Brady. But guess what? He has a full offseason of health. He's already been working out with his quarterback, and I almost already think he has more chemistry with Cam Newton than he ever did with Tom Brady. Plus, Cam Newton loves his big targets. And this is the thing with Brandon Ayuk that I'm also buying in with Mr. N'Keal Harry, is the fact that he's awesome after the catch. And Josh McDaniels was finding ways in his rookie year to get him the football in manufactured ways, whether it be a screen or just a running play. N'Keal Harry had a lot of rushing attempts last year for a player that played in limited outings and limited snaps. He was dangerous with the football in his hands in his rookie year. And he showcased ability at times to win contested footballs. I think N'Keal's going to be healthy. I think N'Keal is going to sneak up on Edelman to become the #1 receiver in this offense. And he's being taken in double-digit rounds. I just don't get it. Now to the deep sleepers at the tight end position, a position that a lot of people are looking for those deep sleepers. Now, these players are probably the players that are not being recognized enough. So I wanted to give them some shine, but there are plenty of tight ends that I believe are sleepers in fantasy this year. Let's start off with the guy that is not the sexy pick, but a player that I think has a good chance of finishing in the top 10 of tight ends. That is Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle is a player that could be the #2 option for Phillip Rivers in Indianapolis. He probably, other than maybe T.Y. Hilton, has the most familiarity with this Frank Reich offense. He is very consistent. Reich has found different ways to align him, whether that be in line, in the slot, in the backfield even, sometimes playing as an H-back. Rivers loves his tight ends with Antonio Gates or Hunter Henry. And Jack Doyle is just a very consistent target. He's not exactly the most athletic tight end in the world, but he's very smart. And when you have a veteran like Rivers, he's going to be counting on smart players to be where he wants them to be so he can locate them and throw them the football. It's about trust with veteran quarterbacks. And Doyle will be able to gain that trust very quickly. I think he'll become the #2 to Hilton's #1. And there's a lot of games where Hilton may miss because he's always injury prone. So yeah, you could draft Michael Pittman, you could invest in Paris Campbell, but the safe guy to target is actually Jack Doyle. And there's no more Eric Ebron either. And I'm not even going to talk about Trey Burton because it's just not worth it. Jack Doyle is actually a pretty nice late round target at tight end. My second deep sleeper at the tight end position is Eric Ebron. I just talked about him. Another player that isn't really being discussed in the tight end conversation for fantasy. He's a player that spent part of the offseason living with his quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. Ben doesn't do that with every receiver that signs with the team. Eric Ebron, that happened. He already seems to have a little bit of chemistry with Ben on the field, off the field, and I think he could legitimately become their #1 go-to red zone target. Eric Ebron is a very talented receiver, and when he's had a good quarterback, he's been able to put up relevant fantasy production. I believe in 2020, he'll be able to do that again with the opportunity he has in Pittsburgh. And my final deep sleeper for the 2020 season is Chris Herndon of the New York Jets. Herndon is a player that's starting to get a little bit of buzz, but people are finally recognizing that he might have the second best opportunity in terms of receptions and targets within this offense for the Jets. Sam Darnold has to throw the football to somebody. And I'm not quite sure I trust Rashad Perryman, although he has upside. I'm pretty sure I don't trust Mims as a rookie. Yes, I like Jamison Crowder to get a lot of receptions, but somebody else has to catch the football. That could be Chris Herndon, who had an awesome rookie season, fell off the map in his second year with injuries. And we've seen that Adam Gase loves this kid and also will utilize multiple tight end sets to get his tight ends involved for his quarterback. Darnold also loves throwing the ball short and intermediate. Herndon's going to eat there, and Herndon's going to eat in the red zone. Those are my deep sleepers for the 2020 season. Players drafted after the 10th or the 12th round, depending on position. Let me know your deep sleepers in the comment section below. And if you have any questions about my sleepers, in the comments. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more fantasy just like this. And Gronk spike the like button. Peace.